you go to work for the government and you stand up at the podium like Kareem has done and knowingly and fully lie to the American people.
And now the continuing constitutional crisis of having a man known to be mentally incapable.
I better not start the questions, I'll get in trouble.
Who's running the country? Not Joe Biden, especially now that he's taking a big, giant 1-week vacation. He's still supposed to be the president, you know, but he's going away on vacation. We're going to cover that news, and we're going to give you 2 new names that have arisen that I don't believe I've covered them fully here before on who's actually running the country. It's probably not who you think it is. If you think it rhymes with schmarok, schmo, schmama. We have 2 new names besides him. Welcome to Doug in Exile. This is where the happy patriots are as we hang together, make the news as entertaining as possible. Of course, all I ask from you is I'd love to get a subscribe. I'd love to see you give us a thumbs up. And I always love to hear from you in the comments below. Where are you from? Tell us something about you. This is not a one-way street where I'm just doing this. Look, it's the internet. We get to do this.
I just have to ask when the accountability is going to come for every single person who sat in front of a television, who held some position of responsibility and lied their rear end off about what they were seeing behind closed doors. People came on television and said, oh, I'm with him all day and he's really engaged and he's doing the job and he's running circles around us and these videos are cheap fakes, and on and on and on. Brazen lying by people who work for our government, and they lied to us about it.
Now, we kept pushing back on the government. They kept lying. But, you know, governments lie. And I don't have a lot of sympathy for the people that believe those lies, because you have to be pretty you have to want to believe a lie, to believe what they were saying about Biden, that he was sharp, that he was capable, that he was able to get around just fine at these meetings and make all these decisions. You have to want to be lied to believe that. I think most people have more common sense. I think you and I do. I think people on both sides have more common sense than that. There's only one side, the Democrats, that had an incentive to believe the lie and wanted to believe it. And they thought they could ram this president down our throats again a second time. And then when they realized, oh, we got caught during the debate, they said, we better throw Kamala in. And now we're going to lie about her. She's joy, she's brat, she's popular, she's articulate. And what we learned this year is, for people accusing politicians of lying all the time, it's weird how politics really didn't work this year because we didn't believe the lies.
You go to work for the government and you stand up at the podium like Kareem has done and knowingly and fully lie to the American people, because you know full well what you see behind the scenes and what you're saying in front of the podium.
So this is Joe Biden coming out of Air Force One, going on vacation for 1 week. You know, as the world's melting down, he only has a little bit time left in the presidency. You'd think he'd want to remain president and enjoy the last month. No, he had to escape and go on vacation. Why? Because he's mentally impaired. Here's a tweet from the RNC research. Crooked Joe Biden and Jill, ED, they put the doctor behind her as a mockery, arrive in St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands for a week in the sun at taxpayers' expense. Joe, you've been doing such a hard job, you need a vacation. Biden has spent 570 days, nearly 40% of his entire presidency, on vacation. Who's been running the country? He's only there. That's almost half the time that he's not available in the 4 years as president. That is an outrage. I will give you one tiny positive spin to this whole thing, is if every time he's been on vacation, including right now, the nation's actually a little safer. He can only do so much damage. Think of the damage he'd have done if he was sitting in office, active, and driving the whole thing 100% of the time. So we did kind of dodge a bullet on him being impaired.
And now the continuing constitutional crisis of having a man known to be mentally incapable allegedly signing these clemencies and executive orders for that matter. Now, first off,
but the question that you raised regarding the illegality of these pardons. Now, the president doesn't have to physically sign the pardons. All he has to do is basically demonstrate a positive intention to sign. And if he does that, then the auto pen can actually do the signing. But if he doesn't have the mental competency to be able to do that, and they're being signed by other people, and Joe Biden goes, I guess so, then you're right. There's some real questions, not just merely about the pardons. He signed bills yesterday. Are those bills legal?
They're not legal if he's not mentally capable of saying, yes, sign them. By the way, there's a thing, he's called it the auto pen. It automatically signs his signature, but he has to give the yes, because there's thousands of documents getting signed. So a president can't sit there and sign, all the time. Here's a cool meme. Who is the president right now? That's a good question. We're going to answer it with two names. That's a theory. But are these presidential pardons legal? If he technically isn't competent, if he's so impaired that he's not present, which I believe he is. I believe he's so impaired, that he wouldn't be allowed to do other tasks that you'd give people who were impaired. Like he couldn't drive a car. I wouldn't even let him ride a bike. He'd injure himself.
Of who really is responsible for this and whether there are some serious crimes that need to be prosecuted. Now, Jim, clearly I touched a nerve this week with this X post where I warned anyone other than Joe Biden in the White House or in whatever group they might be, that if they are the ones really making these clemency and executive order decisions, that they will face prosecution in the coming months from the likes of Kash Patel and Pam Bondi.
Kash Patel and Pam Bondi are going to go take a look at all of the people doing these signatures for Biden, basically making approvals on his behalf. If that's true, they'll find out. So really, they better be taking a lot of video of Joe Biden giving his yes before they sign these documents and really pardon these criminals, these mass murderers on his behalf.
We elect people for a reason. The elected leadership of the government is supposed to be making decisions. For 4 years, the unelected have been in charge of our country during critical moments. We don't live in a country where the unelected are supposed to rule us. We live where the elected are supposed to rule.
So we elected Biden, but and he's not ruling. So who are the two names? I'll spill them right now. Who's running the country? These two men. For foreign, it's Jake Sullivan, which we've seen him come out and speak on behalf of the president. This is a theory. Remember, this is an allegation that foreign Jake Sullivan is the pinhead running our foreign affairs, which is why the world is on fire. Thank you for your special gift, Jake Sullivan. He's been a U.S. national security advisor since 21. And then domestic, this is a guy I think I've only mentioned once on my show in all these years, so I'm happy to give him a little more heat here. It's Jeff Zients, or Zients. He's the White House chief of staff. So that's a, top position, Joe Biden's right-hand man. Those are the two that are allegedly running the country right now. That is green lighting the signatures, doing, the day-to-day. It's not Jill Biden coming in. Jill Biden, I don't know how interested she is. It's not Barack Obama, where they don't see him walk in and out of the White House. These two are in the White House all the time. So they're the inner circle running the country. That's Jake Sullivan and Jeff Zients, and neither one was elected.
This story really broke out when special counsel Robert Hur said, I'm not going to indict this guy because he would present to a jury as a well-meaning guy, old guy who doesn't know what's going on, or something to that effect. That was the time when all the reporting really should have broken through.
That was the official Hur report, which there's all kinds of scandal all around that, where Hur interviewed the president and said his take home was he was impaired, but that no jury would indict him. This was over if he was conscious and present or knew about the documents case back when Joe Biden had many more documents than Trump for a much longer period of time that Joe Biden wasn't allowed to do. And they were spread across multiple locations, his garage and the Law Institute, and with exposure to China and Hunter Biden, all these people. Remember those documents? That's what really should have triggered all of the press to come after him. But they didn't, because Hur gave him a cover and said, well, if he was ever indicted, they just think he was a doddering old man and feel sorry for him and not prosecute him. Now, that's not his place to make that decision. We have courts. We have judges, we have congressmen, we have oversight committees to make those decisions. And he made that decision in his report. Remember, they also excoriated him. Joe Scarborough, people came after her for the Hur report, saying, how dare you add that little nugget in and undermine the president? And really, Hur was probably the only one that was telling the truth. Remember, when we tried to get Jim Jordan and James Comer there, tried to get that Hur report, not the transcript, but the actual recording of him interviewing Biden, they couldn't get it released. They refused to do it. Merrick Garland refused to do it. And that's why they were saying that he was under contempt and they were going to censure him and throw him in jail and all that. They couldn't get all that passed, but they did let him know, you're doing a cover-up. Covering up that tape, by the way, probably would have protected the Democrat Party to allow them to run someone else if he was truly impaired. So that's the kind of stuff that the leak and the cover-up was massive, bigger than we ever imagined. And that was all over, all those documents also were over Joe Biden in a bragging in a, someone was doing a biography about him and he was showing him top secret classified documents on tape. And the guy that interviewed him, magically, all those recordings vanished. The cover-up is across the board and insane.
Remember, this was the time where Joe Scarborough went on MSNBC and said, this Biden is the best ever, you know. And so, yeah, obviously there was so much enormous pushback on this narrative. And we should all look at it now and say, shame on the entire press for not getting at this story sooner. And yes, what the Wall Street Journal story told us was they were doing this in 2021. We've had the entire presidency where they tried to hide all of this from the American people. It is a massive scandal.
This is the largest scandal perhaps in American history. When has for 4 years a president been covered up for of his actual mental impairment? There's a lot of things that you could say were different kind of scandals, but I can't think of one where the president isn't the actual president running the country for 4 years and a massive cover up by his own administration. That amount of collusion by that many people is just beyond. You know, you guys know I don't like conspiracies. I don't like pushing conspiracies on you guys. This is a conspiracy. I'm sorry, but it appears to be reality.
I have a lot of questions. I better not start the questions. I'll get in trouble.
Okay, that's Biden saying I better not ask questions or I better not answer questions or I'll get in trouble. So even back then, Joe Biden was covering up the truth. He knew that he wasn't allowed to answer questions. And then his staff was cueing him before question and answer time. Do not answer questions. You see him pick up the microphone and then he puts it back down, scared, not sure. Anyways, now we have two names. It's a massive scandal, massive cover up. Your president is on vacation. And it's no different than when your president is sitting in an office because he's been on vacation for 4 years. I'm Doug in Exile.